You stand amidst a raging crowd, deafened by the roar of 50,000 throats demanding blood. Beneath your feet lies sand, already soaked with the first drops of someone else's death, and above you, the merciless Roman sun, indifferent to human cruelty. Today, you are a witness to the very first games in the Colosseum, where grandeur intertwines with barbarism, and life loses its value with every swing of the sword. Welcome to the heart of the eternal city, where spectacle and death have become inseparable. But before we begin, please like this video, subscribe to the channel, and let me know in the comments which city you're watching from and what time it is there right now. It's fascinating to see who's joining us. Now get comfortable. We're starting right away. You arrive in Rome on a dusty afternoon beneath a sullen sky, gray as iron. It is the year 80, though nobody around here keeps track of dates the way you do. To them, this is simply the time of Emperor Titus, son of Vespasian, conqueror of Judea, bringer of peace, and most importantly, the man who built the greatest amphitheater the world has ever seen. At least, that's what everyone keeps saying as they jostle you through the narrow, crowded streets, trampling your toes and staining the edges of your carefully sewn sandals with dirt and other less identifiable substances. Your first thought upon entering Rome is simple and somewhat disheartening: how terribly noisy it is. You've heard of Rome described as majestic, vibrant, the city that all roads lead to, but nobody mentioned the ceaseless cacophony of voices shouting over one another, the raucous laughter pouring from taverns, the wheels of carts rattling over cobblestones, and animals bleating, barking, and occasionally screaming. You soon learn that silence in Rome is as rare as a clean toga. You pause, overwhelmed, beneath the shadow of an aqueduct whose arches stretch impossibly high above your head, built by hands now lost to history. It stands as a monumental reminder that you are an insignificant speck in the sprawling story of Rome. Around you, street vendors wave wooden spoons dripping with pungent sauces, begging you to taste foods you can't quite identify and don't especially wish to. Your stomach growls, but you refuse to succumb just yet, wary of the dubious origin of the sizzling meat skewers and unrecognizable stews being stirred ominously in heavy bronze pots. As you move deeper into the city, you hear whispers everywhere, rising and falling in excitement, nervousness, awe. The same words are on everyone's lips. The Amphitheatrum Flavium, the pride of the Flavian dynasty, a structure meant to eclipse everything before it. They whisper that it was built on Nero's lake, on the very spot where that hated emperor once strutted amid artificial landscapes and decadent luxury, that Titus and his father have given back to Rome what Nero had selfishly taken. You pause beside an elderly fruit seller, stooped beneath baskets overflowing with figs and grapes, and ask him what he knows about this great amphitheater. He grins at you, toothless and mischievous, and answers simply, "It will seat 50,000 people, friend, and each one will be screaming." He laughs darkly at his own words, as though he alone understands how grim the future games truly will be. You thank him quickly and move on, unsettled by his toothless grin, haunted by his knowing chuckle. The deeper into the city you venture, the thicker the crowds grow, filling the narrow streets until movement becomes nearly impossible. People shout over your head, demanding passage, elbowing you without apology, their eyes bright with anticipation. A parade, you realize, has begun. A parade of animals from distant lands, creatures you've heard described only in vague and exaggerated whispers from sailors and traders in your home village. You stare, astonished, as cages pass by on great wheeled carts, heavy iron bars trapping beasts whose eyes flicker with panic. A great tawny lion, sleek and dangerous, growls low in his throat. Beside him, a spotted leopard paces restlessly, its tail twitching nervously. There is even a cage holding a lumbering bear whose eyes hold less anger than confusion. And, to your amazement, a monstrous animal with leathery gray skin and a broad snout that you overhear someone call a hippopotamus, whose massive, sweating bulk seems absurdly out of place amid Rome's narrow alleys. You wonder bleakly how many of these creatures, bewildered and afraid, will survive even to reach the arena. You also begin to notice a darker part of Rome, hidden behind its pomp and celebration. Slaves, thousands upon thousands of them, chained and struggling beneath heavy loads, their faces etched with exhaustion. They carry building materials, banners, ornate decorations, immense clay amphorae of wine, jars of olives, bread loaves for distribution to the masses, and even crates of mysterious weapons. Rome's splendor rests squarely upon their shoulders, and you feel suddenly ashamed, uncomfortable, guilty even, though you're unsure precisely why. You continue onward, toward the heart of the chaos, drawn by something intangible, yet irresistible. You know you're approaching the Amphitheatrum Flavium, though your view is blocked by the sea of humanity, all rushing forward, sweeping you with them against your will. You finally catch a glimpse, just the smallest sliver of pale stone, and towering archways emerging from behind rooftops, and your heart skips a beat. Even from this great distance, the sheer scale is overwhelming, a mountain carved by human hands. This, then, is what all the excitement is about, the monument that has reshaped Rome. People chatter around you about the first games scheduled to take place tomorrow, games that promise blood, bravery, and boundless entertainment. You hear murmurs of gladiators who've arrived from across the empire, warriors of unmatched skill who may yet meet their deaths upon that pristine, sand covered arena floor. Night approaches swiftly, draping Rome in a cloak of uneasy anticipation. You find a modest inn, pay the surly innkeeper too many coins for a cramped, musty room, and settle onto your uncomfortable bed. Through the thin walls, you hear a couple arguing loudly, a dog barking incessantly, and somewhere far off, mournful music drifting faintly. Sleep comes grudgingly, your mind tangled with thoughts of tomorrow, uneasy, and yet deeply curious about what horrors and wonders await within those towering stone walls. In your restless dreams, You hear again the toothless fruit seller's laughter and see frightened animal eyes peering helplessly from iron cages. When dawn breaks, thin and cold, you sit upright, blinking away sleep, already certain of one thing: this will not be a day you soon forget. You dress swiftly, leaving your cramped room without eating, stomach churning with nervousness and excitement. You step outside, joining a throng already spilling toward the arena. You feel the pulse of thousands of hearts beating as one, the shared breath of a city whose hunger for spectacle knows no bounds. You are drawn onward, unable to resist, swept along by a current of humanity toward the amphitheatrum Flavium. When at last you break free of the buildings and step into the great square, you freeze. The amphitheater towers over you, larger than anything you've imagined, its curved walls rising upward, dwarfing everything around it. You notice the massive statues, sculpted marble figures of gods and heroes, watching silently as Rome gathers to celebrate itself. You take a deep breath, step forward, and allow the human tide to carry you toward the open gates. The amphitheater yawns wide before you, dark and hungry as the mouths of the lions you glimpsed yesterday. You whisper silently to yourself, repeating the fruit seller's words: 50,000 people, and each one screaming. And as you cross the threshold, heart pounding, you cannot help but wonder grimly what they'll be screaming for. You step inside the massive amphitheater, and immediately it swallows you whole. For a moment, you can only stand in silence, lost beneath the colossal arches and towering columns. The noise here is deafening, louder even than the chaos outside. Thousands of voices blend together into a continuous hum of expectation, occasionally pierced by sudden shouts or laughter. You blink repeatedly, overwhelmed, squinting upward at row after row of seating climbing skyward, packed shoulder to shoulder with Romans from all walks of life. The Amphitheatrum Flavium is built to impress, intimidate, and overwhelm. Each stone seat is filled, from senators in gleaming white togas to wealthy merchants decked in silk, down to the poorest plebeians whose worn tunics betray months without washing. You squeeze through narrow passageways, pushed forward by impatient spectators who seem utterly unbothered by the stifling closeness and relentless heat. The oppressive aroma of unwashed bodies, stale wine, and roasting meat is almost suffocating. You begin to wonder whether breathing itself might become impossible. But despite the discomfort, your eyes continually drift upward to the luxurious imperial box, where Emperor Titus himself presides over the spectacle. The box is positioned perfectly, a marble balcony draped with vibrant purple cloth edged in gold. From here, the emperor can see everything, and more importantly, everyone can see him. Beside Titus, you notice senators and influential nobles vying subtly for his attention, smiling graciously while their eyes dart nervously toward him, as if trying to read his thoughts. Titus himself appears relaxed, smiling broadly and raising his hand periodically to acknowledge waves of cheers from the crowd. Yet beneath the emperor's serene surface, you sense something deeper, a certain tension in his eyes, a shadow cast by recent tragedies. Whispers ripple through the crowd around you. His father, Vespasian, built this amphitheater, but he never lived to see it finished. Imagine the bitterness of dying just before glory. Titus smiles constantly, waving and nodding, but his shoulders slump slightly whenever the murmurs reach his ears. Even from this distance, you perceive the subtle burden he carries, the legacy of a father who left behind unfinished dreams and ambitious projects that now weigh heavily upon his son. You crane your neck, searching again for glimpses of the emperor's face, trying to decipher the story behind his weary eyes. You wonder if Titus regrets the cost of glory, if he questions the morality of the spectacle unfolding beneath his gaze. Or perhaps, you think grimly, he simply wishes to please the masses enough to secure their loyalty, ensuring his own survival in Rome's endlessly perilous political game. A sudden fanfare of horns shatters your reverie. Titus rises majestically, raising both hands to silence the massive crowd. 50,000 voices slowly fade until the amphitheater falls almost eerily quiet. You feel your heartbeat quicken, a rush of adrenaline making your palms slick with sweat. This moment, you realize, marks history, the official opening of the amphitheater, an event whose echoes will outlive Titus and perhaps even Rome itself. Titus begins to speak, his voice powerful, practiced, carrying effortlessly across the sea of faces. Citizens of Rome, today marks a new dawn of greatness and unity. What my father Vespasian began, I have completed for the joy and glory of Rome. A deafening cheer erupts, drowning out the emperor's next words. You look around, bewildered by the wave of euphoria, the fervent delight that erupts from every corner of the amphitheater. Faces shine with anticipation, eyes wide and hungry. Titus gestures again, gently calming the crowd, and continues. Let this day forever be remembered as the beginning of an era of strength and honor. Let Rome show the world that our courage is unmatched, our spirits unbreakable, our empire eternal. Another cheer, louder this time, accompanied by stomping feet and rhythmic clapping. The marble beneath your feet seems to tremble, but as the emperor sits back down, your gaze shifts uneasily from Titus to the massive bronze gate at the arena's edge, behind which, warriors wait to spill their blood. Your attention is suddenly drawn downward to the carefully raked sand floor, bright beneath the sun, smooth and pure, awaiting violence. You wonder vaguely about the slave whose job it is to remove bloodstains, to erase every sign of brutality so each performance can begin anew, pristine and terrible. A man beside you elbows you roughly, breaking your thoughts. He laughs, leaning close, his breath heavy with wine. You look too serious, friend. Today is a celebration. Watch closely. The emperor himself has promised surprises. You nod politely, but cannot shake a lingering sense of unease. Rome's celebrations always seem to mask darker truths beneath bright banners and festive garlands. Titus, with his easy smile and carefully chosen words, seems similarly masked, hiding beneath regal composure a weariness born of constant vigilance. You wonder briefly what secrets lurk behind his measured expression, what he truly sees when he looks at the arena below. Just then, you notice a figure standing in the shadows behind Titus, a quiet man in a dark cloak whose face you cannot clearly see. Something about him unsettles you deeply, though he remains perfectly still, as if he is not truly there, merely a lingering shadow of something darker from Rome's past. The figure does not move or speak, simply waits patiently behind Titus like a living ghost. You ask quietly, unable to resist, "Who is that behind the emperor?" The wine soaked man beside you shrugs dismissively. A guard, perhaps, or a slave. Who knows? Who cares? Soon, friend, the fighting begins. But you care. The figure disturbs you profoundly, as if embodying the ghost of Emperor Vespasian himself, standing unseen behind his son, silently judging, forever overshadowing Titus's reign. Before you can puzzle further, a new wave of cheering erupts as gates creak open at arena level. A procession of gladiators appears, their armor glittering sharply beneath sunlight. Spears and shields catch the glare, dazzling your eyes. They march in disciplined ranks, raising fists or weapons toward Titus, saluting him solemnly. Titus nods gracefully, acknowledging their respect. Yet, despite the spectacle, your gaze returns once more to the shadowed figure behind the emperor. He has disappeared suddenly, inexplicably, as though he had never truly been there at all. You shiver despite the relentless heat. A moment later, the emperor lifts his hand again, signaling clearly this time, "The games shall begin." The crowd roars, rising collectively to its feet, swept up once more in a frenzy of excitement. Beside you, people shout for their favorite fighters, each voice blending into a chorus that deafens reason and compassion alike. And though you know you should watch, you find your eyes wandering again toward the imperial box, toward the empty space where the silent shadow stood. Titus watches calmly, smiling, but his eyes remain dark, distant, as though he alone senses something the crowd cannot. A quiet truth hidden beneath cheers, beneath smiles, beneath the blood and spectacle about to unfold. For a fleeting second, you glimpse the tragic, endless dance of power, glory, and loss that defines Rome itself. And then, with a loud crack of a whip and the clang of swords, the first fight begins. You shift uncomfortably on the rough stone seat, trying in vain to find relief from the relentless heat and press of bodies around you. As the cheers subside briefly into tense silence, your eyes fixate on the sandy arena floor below, where two gladiators circle each other cautiously. You find yourself thinking, somewhat grimly, about how peculiar this spectacle truly is. Thousands of Romans waiting eagerly to watch men kill or be killed, all for the sake of entertainment. You lean forward slightly, squinting against the glaring sun to get a clearer view. The first gladiator is a Myrmilones. His helmet gleams ominously beneath the harsh sunlight, topped with a crest shaped like a fish. He carries a heavy rectangular shield in one hand and a short, razor-sharp sword, known as a gladius, in the other. His opponent, much smaller and lighter, dances deftly around him, a retiarius, armed only with a trident, a dagger, and a weighted net. He wears no helmet, his face exposed and vulnerable, eyes flickering nervously between courage and fear. Whispers ripple through the crowd around you, knowledgeable murmurs from spectators who have seen countless battles. You overhear the man beside you, still heavy with wine, explaining to a companion in overly loud tones. You see, friend, the retiarius fights like a fisherman, agile and swift. He must trap his foe in his net. The murmillo is slow but strong. If he catches the retiarius, it will be swift and bloody. You find yourself profoundly fascinated by these gladiators, not just as fighters, but as men. Who are they beneath their armor and weaponry, beneath their grim, stoic expressions? Volunteers chasing glory, criminals sentenced to the sands, slaves whose fate lies solely in the whims of the crowd. You realize suddenly, almost shamefully, that you know nothing of their stories, their fears, their dreams. A sudden clash of metal jerks your attention back to the fight. The Murmillo lunges, shield raised aggressively, attempting to corner the Retiarius. But the smaller fighter slips aside gracefully, swinging his net with practiced precision. The crowd roars approval, delighted by the cunning move. Around you, spectators rise to their feet, eyes gleaming, fists clenched in anticipation. As the battle intensifies, you recall what you've heard about gladiatorial training. Gladiators prepare meticulously, practicing daily with wooden swords called rudies. These dull weapons, ironically harmless compared to their deadly metal counterparts, allow fighters to rehearse lethal blows without drawing blood. Yet today, the blades are real, and the blood will not be merely a rehearsal. Below, the Retiarius makes a swift, daring strike with his trident, grazing the Murmillo's shoulder. Bright blood stains pale skin, a vivid crimson smear upon armor and sand. The Murmillo staggers slightly, but he quickly regains composure, roaring angrily and charging with reckless fury. The crowd's excitement surges to a deafening crescendo. You observe, mesmerized yet disturbed, as the Retiarius tries again to snare his larger opponent. This time, his weighted net catches firmly around the Murmillo's ankle, entangling him. The Murmillo stumbles, crashing heavily to one knee. The Retiarius lunges, placing his trident's deadly prongs mere inches from the Murmillo's throat, holding him pinned firmly. He looks upward, eyes desperate, awaiting judgment, not from the Emperor, but from the faceless mob surrounding you. A moment of terrifying stillness descends, broken only by ragged breathing echoing from below. You see Emperor Titus, distant and regal, raise a hand slowly. Around you, thousands of voices chant eagerly, some shouting for mercy, others demanding death. Your own heart pounds wildly. This, you realize, is the true horror of the arena, not the violence itself, but the casual power spectators hold over life and death. With measured calmness, Titus lowers his thumb, an unmistakable command: death. The Retiarius nods solemnly, then thrusts his trident downward with grim efficiency. A sickening silence spreads across the amphitheater, followed instantly by a thunderous roar of approval. You watch numbly as attendants rush forth to drag away the fallen Murmillo. The sand, you notice bitterly, drinks greedily of blood. More gladiators soon follow, pairs and groups facing off in swift succession. You learn quickly to recognize their various fighting styles. Thracians, with their small, round shields and curved swords, Hoplomachi, clad in Greek style armor, Secutores, swift chasers who relentlessly pursue Retiarii. Each man's fate seems bound inexorably to his style and role. You begin to discern patterns and rules, grimly aware of the stark reality hidden beneath this seemingly chaotic violence. Each fight, carefully choreographed to thrill spectators without disrupting the careful balance of bloodlust and restraint. You overhear more curious facts as fights continue, stories whispered in the stands, passed from eager mouth to eager ear. Gladiators, you learn, are often celebrities outside the arena, their images etched into lamps, plates, and coins, idolized by youths and romantically pursued by aristocratic admirers. Some gladiators, even slaves, amass wealth and acclaim sufficient to secure their freedom, yet many choose to return voluntarily, seduced by the addictive roar of crowds and the irresistible allure of fame. You struggle with conflicted emotions. Part of you wishes to condemn these brutal displays, yet another part remains captivated by the gladiators' sheer bravery, skill, and determination. They face almost certain death daily, yet stride proudly onto the sands regardless. Heroes or victims, you cannot be sure. As the sun climbs higher, sweat drips uncomfortably down your neck, the air heavy with dust and the metallic scent of blood. Another fight begins. Another pair of gladiators circle, each searching for weaknesses, opportunities. But your eyes wander beyond the fighters to the crowd around you, 50,000 faces twisted with excitement, anger, ecstasy, and cruelty. They frighten you more than any sword or spear ever could. You recall the elderly fruit seller's cryptic words about each spectator screaming, and suddenly, bitterly, you understand. These gladiators, brave or foolish, skilled or terrified, are not merely combatants. They are mirrors reflecting Rome itself, its virtues and flaws, its grace and brutality, intertwined inseparably. Another gladiator falls, another cheer erupts. You find yourself suddenly exhausted, yearning for the spectacle's end, yet knowing it is far from over. Rome's hunger for blood seems insatiable, its appetite growing with every strike, every death. You glance briefly upward toward the imperial box. Titus watches impassively, face calm, eyes betraying nothing, yet you sense, again, the shadow of his father hovering quietly behind him, silently questioning the true cost of Rome's glory. With grim resignation, you settle back onto the uncomfortable stone seat, preparing yourself for more violence, more bloodshed, and the unsettling knowledge that you too have become part of this cruel game. The sand below, you realize darkly, has no memory. Tomorrow it will lie clean, ready again for battle, awaiting fresh sacrifices. But your own memory is not so easily cleansed. You close your eyes briefly, whispering a silent prayer for the fallen, uncertain whether anyone, God or mortal, is truly listening. As the sun drifts lazily toward late afternoon, staining the sky with golden hues, you breathe deeply, praying that the relentless spectacle might soon draw to a close. Yet, just as the crowd around you seems finally satisfied by the day's bloody entertainment, an eager murmur ripples across the amphitheater, reigniting the fervor and anticipation you've come to dread. The heavy iron gates creak ominously open once more, and your pulse quickens instinctively. But instead of gladiators, terrified animals begin to emerge, creatures plucked from distant lands, their bewildered eyes scanning desperately across a landscape utterly alien and hostile. You feel your stomach churn, realizing this new chapter of cruelty has only just begun. A collective gasp rises from the spectators as a massive lion, its golden mane gleaming majestically beneath the waning sunlight, prowls warily into the arena. Its muscles ripple beneath tawny fur, powerful and magnificent, yet clearly frightened. It paces uncertainly, nostrils flaring as it scents blood lingering in the sand. You sense immediately the stark contrast between the animal's innate nobility and the vulgar bloodlust pulsing through the human crowd around you. A man near you leans forward eagerly, calling to his companions. Watch closely now, friends. These beasts hail from faraway lands. Titus himself has spared no expense. This lion was surely brought from Africa, traveling for weeks in a dark cage just to meet its end here. His laughter is sharp, ugly, devoid of sympathy. Your fists clench involuntarily, but you remain silent, swallowed by helpless rage and sadness. From the other side of the arena, you see movement, gladiators, different from those earlier. Venatores, or beast fighters, equipped specifically for hunting exotic animals. These men carry spears, nets, and javelins, weapons meant not simply to kill, but to prolong spectacle and suffering. You watch, sickened, as they fan out across the arena, their movements slow, deliberate, calculated to maximize drama. Suddenly, more gates open. Exotic creatures pour forth in confusion. Leopards spotted with inky black markings, a frantic bear stumbling clumsily into sunlight, and, to your astonishment, a massive gray hippopotamus lumbering gracelessly yet dangerously across the sand. Spectators erupt into astonished cheers and laughter, delighted by the novelty of these animals, unaware or uncaring of their obvious distress. You overhear someone nearby shouting gleefully, "A hippopotamus! By Jupiter! Have you ever imagined such a thing? How absurd, yet how marvelous!" But you see nothing marvelous here, only cruelty disguised as amusement. You imagine these animals harrowing journeys, cramped in cages, sailing treacherous seas, deprived of familiar habitats, food, and peace, all for the brief entertainment of a city bored by simpler spectacles. The Venatores begin their grim work. A leopard lunges desperately, claws flashing, but is swiftly entangled in weighted nets. The crowd cheers mercilessly. The terrified bear snarls, teeth bared fiercely, though its fear is unmistakable. You turn away briefly, unable to stomach watching as the spear finds its mark, the bear's pained roar drowned out instantly by thunderous applause. You recall stories whispered earlier, strange, troubling facts learned from sailors and traders. Exotic animals often died en route to Rome, succumbing to hunger, thirst, and despair. Those that survived arrived weakened, traumatized shadows of their true selves. Rome saw only trophies, never suffering. You feel shame boiling bitterly within, yet remain seated, helplessly complicit. The massive lion, meanwhile, roars defiantly, pacing restlessly, refusing to die quietly. Spectators grow impatient, eager for blood. One venator steps boldly forward, spear raised theatrically, deliberately provoking the lion's charge. The beast lunges forward, noble even in desperation, but the hunter expertly dodges, driving his spear cruelly into golden flesh. The crowd erupts again in wild cheers, oblivious to the animal's pain and terror. You glance upward toward the imperial box. Titus watches impassively, face unreadable, though you sense hidden sorrow behind regal composure. You wonder briefly whether he too sees the tragedy beneath this monstrous spectacle, or if, perhaps, he has grown numb beneath the weight of power. Your gaze returns reluctantly to the amphitheater floor. The strange, tragic hippopotamus has been cornered, eyes wide and frightened, mouth gaping as it bellows in futile defiance. Its thick gray skin glistens with sweat, but escape is impossible. Men circle cautiously, jabbing spears at its enormous bulk. The creature tries clumsily to escape, stumbling awkwardly, eliciting laughter from spectators who mistake its panic for comedy. Beside you, a child laughs innocently, delighted by the animal's grotesque struggle. You feel suddenly ill, wondering bitterly at the ease with which humans find amusement in suffering, blinded by spectacle from compassion. Hours pass agonizingly. Animals fall, one after another, each death greeted enthusiastically by spectators whose thirst for novelty seems endless. The sands, once pristine, now glisten wetly, streaked with crimson and black, a gruesome painting of Rome's darker heart. You long desperately for escape, yet feel rooted by morbid fascination and horror. Rome's cruelty, you realize with sudden clarity, lies not merely in violence itself, but in spectators' indifference, their eagerness to transform suffering into entertainment. As shadows lengthen, attendants begin dragging away lifeless carcasses, preparing the arena for whatever final acts remain. The crowd quiets gradually, murmuring satisfaction, almost sated, but not yet fully. You wonder what further horrors Titus might have planned, what other twisted pleasures await spectators still hungry for blood. Yet your heart remains fixed upon these animals, taken from distant homes and condemned here solely for Rome's idle amusement. Their bewildered eyes haunt you, begging silently for compassion you cannot offer, justice you cannot deliver. A sudden whisper, gentle yet accusing, crosses your mind. Who truly are the beasts here? You glance once more at the amphitheater around you, faces twisted with glee, shouting, jeering, oblivious or uncaring of the agony they've caused. The animals are not the savages here. Rather, it is humanity itself that proves savage beyond measure. With weary resignation, you sink back onto the stone seat, haunted by what you've witnessed. Night approaches rapidly now, shadows gathering quietly, draping the arena in darkness mercifully, concealing Rome's many sins. Yet even darkness cannot fully erase memory. Tonight, you realize bitterly, you'll sleep uneasily, tormented by visions of noble creatures forced cruelly into spectacle, forever questioning your own complicity in humanity's endless hunger for violence disguised as entertainment. You breathe deeply, inhaling dust, blood, sorrow. Around you, spectators rise, stretching tiredly, already discussing tomorrow's games eagerly. Your fists unclench slowly, helplessly, haunted by cruel truth. Rome's cruelty has no end, its appetite boundless, its victims endless, animal and human alike. As you rise to leave, your final glance backward reveals nothing but blood-stained sands, bathed softly in twilight. The silence echoes loudly with forgotten screams, yet already Rome prepares eagerly for tomorrow's fresh horrors, erasing today's victims from memory, repeating endlessly the tragic cycle of cruelty hidden behind its glorious facade. You depart slowly, bitterly aware that Rome, with its endless hunger for blood, will never truly be satisfied. Evening descends softly upon Rome, washing away the harshness of daylight and leaving behind a city cloaked in somber shadows. As you step from the amphitheater, the transition is almost surreal, from deafening cheers and cries of agony to the muffled murmurs of weary crowds shuffling slowly homeward. You glance downward, grimacing faintly at the dark stains of blood and sand caked onto your sandals, a stark reminder of the day's grim spectacle. Around you, Romans spill from the massive arches, bodies pressed together in exhaustion, yet strangely satisfied. The violent excitement of earlier hours has faded, replaced by a quiet fatigue, murmured conversation, and occasional laughter echoing hollowly through narrow, torchlit streets. You feel a sudden, almost suffocating loneliness, stranded among thousands, yet isolated entirely by your troubling thoughts. You consider speaking aloud, sharing your uneasy reflections with someone, but hesitate, sensing the futility of discussing cruelty with those who've willingly consumed it all day. Instead, you remain silent, moving quietly among anonymous faces and darkened alleyways, seeking refuge in silence. Lanterns flicker gently, casting wavering light upon walls stained by graffiti. Words and images hastily etched by Romans, whose passions remain hidden by daylight, revealed only beneath night's protective cloak. You wonder vaguely whether tomorrow's cruelty will inspire fresh markings upon these walls, or if tonight's sleep will mercifully erase memories of today's victims entirely. Passing beneath a towering aqueduct, you pause momentarily, glancing upward at colossal arches silhouetted darkly against the deepening twilight. Its presence feels somehow reassuring, solid, ancient, a testament to Rome's engineering brilliance. Yet it also fills you with quiet melancholy, reminding you that humanity's greatness and cruelty seem forever intertwined. The gentle rustle of fabric interrupts your thoughts, pulling your attention downward toward a street vendor carefully packing away his unsold wares. He moves silently, almost invisibly, just another anonymous figure amidst countless others whose lives revolve quietly around Rome's spectacles. Your heart tightens briefly, reminded bitterly of the toothless fruit seller's grim laughter, his prophetic warning echoing hauntingly in your mind. 50,000 people, and each one screaming. How right he was, you think solemnly. Yet no laughter escapes you now, only quiet sadness, deep regret. You move onward, seeking refuge among shadowed streets, pausing occasionally to gaze upon faintly illuminated statues, silent marble figures whose beauty now feels hollow, superficial. They seem to watch solemnly, their marble eyes fixed blankly upon empty spaces, neither condemning nor approving humanity's endless capacity for cruelty. Soon you find yourself approaching the outskirts of the Forum. It lies mostly deserted at this late hour, yet you sense faint echoes lingering, voices whispering across centuries, reminding you that today's spectacle is not new, merely another chapter in Rome's timeless dance of power and brutality. Finally, weary legs carry you toward the Tiber River, its dark waters shimmering faintly beneath moonlight. You lean gently against a stone railing, gazing downward into water moving endlessly, silently forward, unconcerned by Rome's triumphs or tragedies, oblivious entirely to humanity's cruelties. You envy its peace, its indifference. Behind you, the Amphitheatrum Flavium looms large even from this distance, a towering shadow outlined faintly against dark skies. Its presence remains oppressive, overwhelming. You wonder whether future generations will remember it simply as an architectural marvel, blind to suffering hidden within its walls, or if some distant visitor might someday stand precisely where you stand now, pondering similarly bleak truths. Your thoughts drift uneasily toward an Emperor Titus. Earlier today, he appeared calm, composed, regal, yet you sensed beneath royal confidence a lingering sorrow, perhaps regret. Did Titus share your unease, or had he merely accepted cruelty as necessary sacrifice upon Rome's altar of glory? You recall again the dark figure standing silently behind Titus, a ghostly shadow vanishing swiftly. Perhaps it was truly Vespasian's restless spirit, silently judging Rome's excesses, mournful yet impotent, to halt cruelty born of human nature itself. Closing your eyes briefly, you recall vividly the amphitheater's first victims, brave gladiators facing death courageously, terrified animals torn cruelly from distant homes, thousands of spectators cheering mercilessly, heedless of suffering. Their faces haunt you now, each etched sharply upon memory. Yet you sense grimly that Rome itself will swiftly forget them, replacing today's tragedies with tomorrow's spectacles, endlessly seeking fresh victims to satisfy its insatiable hunger for amusement. Your heart tightens painfully, burdened heavily by bitter awareness that cruelty remains humanity's eternal companion. You sigh, softly, opening weary eyes once more to gaze across darkened Rome, now wrapped snugly beneath night's protective cloak. It appears peaceful, almost serene, yet beneath calm surfaces lie countless dark truths, hidden cruelties awaiting dawn's harsh illumination. Slowly, resignedly, you step away from the Tiber's comforting embrace, retracing earlier steps toward modest lodgings awaiting you quietly. Sleep, you realize bitterly, will offer little comfort tonight, disturbed surely by dreams, haunted endlessly by today's horrors. Returning quietly to your tiny rented room, you remove sandals crusted darkly with dried blood and sand, setting them aside distastefully. Candlelight flickers faintly, casting long shadows across walls, shadows reminding you uncomfortably of amphitheater walls towering ominously overhead earlier. You lie down carefully, eyes drifting slowly shut, praying desperately that sleep might erase horrors witnessed today. Yet memory proves stubbornly persistent, refusing to yield peacefully. Images return vividly, terrified eyes, bloodied sands, triumphant crowds screaming mercilessly, endlessly. Yet amid darkness and sorrow, a quiet realization dawns softly within your troubled heart. Though unable today to halt cruelty's tide, perhaps someday, years, centuries hence, humanity might awaken finally from collective madness, rejecting violence in favor of compassion. Perhaps, you think gently, today's horrors might yet inspire future hearts toward kindness, mercy. You cling desperately to this faint hope, embracing fragile optimism amidst overwhelming darkness. Exhaustion soon overcomes you slowly, mercifully dulling memory's sharp edges. Your breathing deepens gradually, surrendering gently toward troubled sleep, haunted yet softened slightly by fragile hope of brighter tomorrows. Outside, beneath gentle moonlight, Rome slumbers quietly, unaware entirely that you lie awake, mourning forgotten victims sacrificed carelessly upon sands of cruel entertainment. And yet, as consciousness fades gradually, you whisper softly into darkness, words barely audible, yet deeply heartfelt. Forgive us. Sleep claims you then gently, mercifully, granting brief escape from memories too painful for waking hours. Yet somewhere deep within slumber's gentle embrace, you sense Rome itself remains awake, eternally restless, waiting patiently beneath darkness for fresh dawn to illuminate timeless truths hidden endlessly beneath glorious facades, revealing once again humanity's darkest and brightest potentials, intertwined inseparably upon history's ever-turning wheel.